From Rescuing to Compassion, Part 3. The day I stopped saying, I feel for you. This story was originally published in Be Yourself on Medium. In this, the final of my 3-part series, I'm musing about my journey from rescuing to compassion. In Part 1, the one with the poem, I noted that helping can sometimes be tangled up with rescuing. In Part 2, I explored the subtle difference in energy between sympathy and empathy and decided that empathy is a clear winner. Today, I go into that a little bit further and even explore the idea of emotional surrogacy. There are whole Facebook pages, websites and podcasts dedicated to the life of empaths. I was an empath before the noun was ever invented. That should be a good thing, right? Well, it starts to sound a little murky when you read this definition, which I borrow from Barb Dalton's article called Sympathy versus Empathy. Here's a quote. According to Dr. Judith Orloff, an empath is a person who absorbs the world's joys and stresses like emotional sponges. They lack the filters most people use to protect themselves from excessive stimulation and can't help but take in surrounding emotions and energies, whether they're good, bad, or something in between. I know a number of people, including fellow therapists, who feel others' emotions and energies so intensely that they are often left feeling overwhelmed and depleted. Doing the emotional work for them. On a personal level, when I started repeatedly hearing myself say that innocuous phrase, I feel for you, I realised I was actually trying to do just that. Do the feeling work for them. This awareness began my journey from emotional surrogacy towards compassionate holding. Here's what I mean. Current day scenario 1. Barb has had a pattern of attracting in people who are not yet in touch with their emotions. In conversation, person X will be describing a situation which deserves their anger and possibly even rage. This is often delivered with a blank expression or even an incongruous smile. Barb, being a good little empath and emotional surrogate, starts emoting on her behalf. It sounds something like this. She said, "What? They did what to you? That's not right." Followed by attempts to help person X find ways to empower herself and remedy the situation. Person X shrugs her shoulders resignedly and wanders off, clearly not yet ready to own or feel her own emotional state, clearly not ready to move from victimhood to empowerment. Barb here is left seething and railing at the injustice of it all, having surrogated someone else's rage and given herself a good dose of anger chemicals along the way. And it's not even my problem. Perhaps there's a projection there that I haven't yet noticed. In any case, clearly my empathy needs tweaking. Current day scenario 2. Barb is talking to person Y, who is getting close to feeling his sadness and pain. She's immediately in that emotional state with him as he describes the situation, affirming him with, I feel for you, that's so tough. He quickly clambers away from the sadness and switches immediately to, oh well, never mind, do you want a cuppa? He proceeds to carry on as if nothing has happened, clearly not ready to do more than dip his toe in that feeling. Barb here is left drained by having surrogated the energy of pain on his behalf, having given herself a good dose of grief chemicals along the way. Oh, you mean they're just venting? My empath was formed at such an early age that I had no way of knowing that someone was simply venting without wanting to do anything about the situation. I had no way of knowing that my job was simply to be a kid, not going around on ill-advised rescue missions that were beyond me anyway. Instead, I must have psychically put my hand up and volunteered. Oh yes, no worries. I'll absorb that emotional charge for you. I'm an emotional sponge with no filter. I'm up for it. Energy exchanges, releasing the charge. I remember reading the Celestine prophecy years ago and resonating deeply with the truth of energy exchanges. In a perfect world, people would take responsibility for their own regulation and processing in healthy ways, but many people have not learned how to do that. Their only reaction is to release the stored energy charge through either venting or acting out, often through an angry outburst. Afterwards, a kind of equilibrium is restored and they feel so much better. The trouble is that others have been caught in the crossfire. They've unwittingly or voluntarily absorbed a big fat energy package that wasn't theirs to begin with. My empathy needs tweaking. Oh, I'm so in love with this younger part of myself whose emotional surrogacy was her very best attempts at lovingly wanting to help. But clearly, the quality of my empathy now needs tweaking. It's time to let go of my entrenched role as fixer-upper. No more ill-advised rescue attempts for me. What happens when I give up being an emotional sponge? What happens when I stop saying, I feel for you? What if I leave them with it? How can that possibly be love? Compash is the new empath. Working through these unfamiliar feelings that I've abandoned someone if I don't feel their emotions for them, I gradually move into new territory. In this world, I allow that person to have their own feelings. I limit the amount of mere venting I'm willing to listen to, and I provide what I'm calling compassionate holding. My heart is bursting with love for them as they go through this. I energetically hold space for that person without taking it on for them. It might sound like, I'm hearing you. It will involve practical help if required. Afterwards, I keep careful watch out for taking on their emotions anymore and try to remind myself that it's their journey. If and when they're ready, they will find the tools to empower themselves to deal with it, just like I have. I think I'll start calling myself a compash rather than an empath. What's left to do now that I'm not attempting all this so-called rescuing? Importantly, I become curious about my own projections. Am I ever projecting onto others my own disempowerment or unacknowledged pain? It's so much easier to see and try to remedy in others. Time to continue taking responsibility for my own emotional regulation and processing. In letting go of the rescuer role, I'm also released to be merely a kid again. I'm more accepting of all that life brings. I lighten up. I find more joy and fun. If you've enjoyed this series and feel that other people might find it helpful as well, I'd appreciate it if you could activate the algorithm to help others find it. All you need to do is subscribe to my channel here, give a thumbs up or a quick comment, or even share it. If you're interested in reading my book called Good Choice, A Soul's Story, that's available at Balboa Press, Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and it's now just recently been made available in audio version. This little series was my way of practicing for that big project.